Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to be doing the death chart of John F. Kennedy Jr. when his plane went down on July 16th, 1999 at 9:41 p.m. Martha's Vineyard. There are some people that think that he's still alive, but he isn't, and I'm going to explain why. On that day, the transiting asteroid called Phaeton, which has to do with plane crashes and car crashes, it was in the third house, conjuncting his midheaven by 2 degrees. Whatever touches your midheaven means that the public or the whole world will end up finding out about it. So plane crash, third house has to do with travel, conjuncting his midheaven. The transiting sun was conjuncting his Pollux in the sign of Cancer, 1 degree, and Cancer is a water sign. Pollux has to do with, it's a fixed star that has to do with death. On that day, the moon and the vertex was in exact conjunction, and it was also conjuncting his ascendant by 4 degrees, trined by his Oceania asteroid, 2 degrees, and also trined by transiting Saturn that day, which is the ancient Lord of Death. So we have the moon and the vertex in complete conjunction, and it conjuncted his ascendant at exactly the time that his plane went down. So this indicates to me that there was either a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse prior to his plane crash. And what I found was his there was a solar eclipse, September 1, 1997, in 9 degrees, sign of Virgo. And it conjuncted his Pluto ascendant and North Node. So what happens here is that when there is an eclipse, it leaves hot spots on personal planets or your angles in your natal chart. And specifically this one, it was his ascendant. Now, on this day, at 9:41 p.m., the moon returned to that position and conjuncted his ascendant, and it was in 15 degrees, Virgo. So I think that was the trigger that caused the plane to go down. I mean, I'm not saying that it was the moon that caused this. What I'm saying is it was the activation that brought everything else into play. It's like a volcano. You don't know when it's going to erupt, but when it does, then it's dormant and then it explodes. So that's the situation I think that happened here. Solar and lunar eclipses, their energy, when it hits your angles or personal planets on your natal chart, the energies will stay dormant for up to 2 years. Now, the asteroid Ixion, Kennedy, and Pluto conjuncts his sun, 0 degrees, and also trined his natal death marker asteroid Osiris, 1 degree. Now, Ixion is a murder asteroid. I don't know if he was murdered or if somebody tampered with his plane. I'm just telling you what I see in this synastry chart on the day that he died with death. Kennedy is a personal name asteroid. So we have Ixion, Kennedy, Pluto conjuncting his sun, 0 degrees. Kennedy was in the sign of Sagittarius, and Sagittarius, it rules travel, and it's also ruled by Jupiter. And on that day, Jupiter fell into his 8th house, and the 8th house has to do with death. In his natal chart, the death marker asteroid Osiris, which means Egyptian god of the dead, in Aries, ruled by Mars. Mars has to do with violent deaths. And the transiting Mars that day was conjuncting his Kennedy asteroid, 1 degree. See how this rolls right along? It's not just one aspect, it tells a story. When you start getting into it, everything else moving forward validates the aspect before. So it's like I've said before, putting pieces into a puzzle and then the picture forms. Now on that day, Lachesis was in the 8th house, which rules death, and it was conjuncting his Neptune planet and an asteroid called Senator. Yes, there is an asteroid called Senator. Neptune, god of the sea, in the 3rd house. And the 3rd house also has to do with travel. Lachesis on that day was also sextiling his natal Pluto, 0 degrees. Pluto is the modern lord of death, and Lachesis is a death marker asteroid. Now, on that day, the south node in the death wheels chart was in the 12th house. That has to do with endings, and it was conjuncting his natal vertex, a very important point in your natal chart, by 0 degrees. So the south node in the death wheel chart conjuncting his vertex, 0 degrees, that's fate. His natal Pluto in the 12th house that rules endings was opposite an asteroid called Neros. The asteroid Neros has to do with, he was the eldest son of the sea. So on that day, that asteroid was transiting, his natal Pluto was opposing the transiting Neros asteroid, son of the sea, 2 degrees, in the sign of Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune, god of the sea. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because now I'm just going to go right to the PNA asteroids, which means personal name asteroids, and there's plenty of them. And when you start plugging those into charts, it's a very eerie connection. It's almost like fate. So on that day, the transiting asteroid called Carolyn, his wife, was sextiling the transiting asteroid called Lauren, which was her sister, 0 degrees. You can't get tighter than that. 0 degrees is the tightest orb. So this is not like fudging something or trying to make it look like it was fate. 0 degrees, really tight. Transiting Carolyn asteroid was in the 8th house that rules death, and it was sextiling his natal Requiem by 2 degrees in the 12th house of endings. Requiem is a death marker. It means funeral for the dead. So that's where they had their funeral, at sea. Transiting Lauren asteroid in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, which has to do with travel, trined his natal Requiem, 2 degrees, in the 12th house of endings. On that day, transiting Saturn was conjuncting his natal asteroid, Lauren, in the 9th house at 3 degrees. And the 9th house also has to do with travel. So I just wanted to tell everybody out there that thinks he's still alive and he's coming back. He's not coming back. He went down in that plane, unfortunately, with his wife and her sister. Rest in peace to them. And I hope you enjoyed this interpretation. And if you're interested in hearing about more synastry charts, hit the subscribe button, and I will be back again soon.